There is a deep historical connection between Florida and the continent commonly referred to in modern times as Antarctica. It is my firm belief that this area around the South Pole was well known in the ancient world and just referred to by a different name. But both locations have something in common. The early explorers referred to them as uninhabitable. De Soto, amongst many other explorers, returned to the Spanish crown with stories of an impassable thicket of swamps occupied by terrifying monsters and creatures beyond description, of course, talking about the alligators. And they were true to some extent. There are parts of Florida along the coast that are much like that. Like in Antarctica, the early explorers came back with stories of this frozen wasteland, wind, ice, rock, and snow, completely devoid of any redeeming value whatsoever and completely uninhabitable. De Soto died in 1542, if memory serves. That would be about 20 years before the founding of St. Augustine, 1565. But what do we know now about Florida and the New World? What will the next few hundred years bring for what we know to be Antarctica? There's a story out of India that we're going to refer to later in the video that is going to blow your mind, because it is the first time I have heard anyone refer to climate change as a good thing. Believe it or not, that is the truth. A story out of India has now referenced climate change in a positive light. But the reality is this: Florida is a land of dreamers. Florida was settled by dreamers, as was most of North America, but especially Florida. The world has historically always belonged to those who not only dreamed, but then made a plan and put those dreams into action. Many have varying opinions about Walt Disney, but he said the secret of making dreams come true can be summarized in 4 C's: curiosity, confidence, courage, and constancy. And the greatest of these is confidence. He was probably the first in a long line of what they call Florida men, largely reviled by the leftist media, but the source of all progress historically. Men who had a dream, men who put those dreams, no matter how wild or crazy, into action. Even Henry Flagler, who built a railway down to the Keys. This could be Antarctica. What you're looking at here in 100 years, 150 years. It may be the reality, but it will only be the dreamers that make it happen. Not those who talk about safety and security and predictability. Especially not those fearful of any post online that might go against what the accepted science is. That's for sure. There are stories historically about a land with fantastical buildings and creatures, with amazing technology. Most didn't survive the Dark Ages, but there are still a few stories out there. And it is my belief that what they were referring to was a land at the South Pole. A land with many different cultures, some very advanced, some very different. But this is how they defeat it. This is how the media and many in charge defeat any dreamer. It's called the pseudo-scientific method. It's based on something called Occam's razor. And Occam's razor says that usually the most simple explanation should be preferred. Now, here's how they do it. If someone says, for example, Antarctica has all of the prerequisite needs for life: fresh water, volcanic soil, heat from the earth. Everything is there, and we've seen evidence of life. Therefore, it is highly unlikely that there wasn't advanced life there. So the first step in defeating that is to manufacture some supposed flaw in the observation. Sowers' law, ignorance plus trivia equals fact. A technique of deflection wherein a claim to supposed fact is derived from a standalone manufactured or trivial observation. So then, the Semmelweis reflex, the evidence is disqualified. Meaning, have you ever met an advanced life form from Antarctica? Well, someone would say, well, no. Well, okay. So since you haven't done that, we can disqualify you, and therefore anything you have ever said, the next step, fallacy of composition, all evidence is disqualified. This is also kind of a primer on how trolls work on the internet. Manufacture some supposed flaw in their observation, then disqualify that evidence, and then since that is wrong, all other things are wrong. And since all other things are wrong and disqualified, no things can be right. No evidence exists. Appeal to ignorance, and therefore subject is discredited. Now, all this happens inside a matter of seconds in most people's minds. Oh, if I was wrong about this, then I was probably wrong about that, and then all other things that I've ever been partially wrong about, I'm probably completely wrong about, and so therefore there's no good reason to continue thinking about anything, and so I should just then defer to my feelings. Lather, rinse, repeat. This is exactly how modern science works. In the 1950s, we had one of the best programs set up to explore the last frontier on the planet. And we gave up on it because of this, the pseudo-scientific method. Now, that article that I was referring to, there are actually 3. This is the first one out of India. A new plant species of moss in Antarctica. Wait, moss? Moss in Antarctica. Wait a minute, how can that possibly be? Well, it's true. They did not expect to find this. It survives the winter and comes back. Now, they try to lay it at the feet of climate change, but the way they refer to it isn't in the negative like almost all of the media does. Man-made climate change, man-enhanced climate change, all of this tying to, your SUV parked out in the driveway. The discovery of moss on ice in Antarctica is significant and quote-unquote alarming for the world, as it indicates the climate change effect resulting into changing biodiversity pattern in Antarctica, meaning enhanced biodiversity in Antarctica. Enhanced biodiversity in Antarctica. In any other context, that would be reported as good news and be front page on CNN and the liberal media. But because it doesn't go along with their pseudo-scientific method that they've pushed for the last 30 years, they're burying this. Now, What if I told you that science actually admitted it was wrong about something? And it has to do with an article that I found from SciTechDaily.com. NASA space lasers discover new lakes under Antarctica ice, but it's not just about the lakes. Scientists have hypothesized subglacial water exchange in Antarctica results from a combination of factors, including fluctuations in the pressure exerted by the massive weight of ice above, the friction between the bed of the ice sheet and the rocks beneath, and the heat coming up from the earth below that is insulated by the thickness of the ice. So we have heat, we have volcanic soil, we have fresh water, and we have moving water. And we have fresh air. Everything is there. Everything is there, but they always bury the lead in these articles. They always do this. They show all the great graphics, but they go down all the way to the bottom. And they reveal something, and they use tricks of syntax to divert your thought process. Now, what they're talking about here is this giant lake that appeared on the surface of Antarctica during the summer, and this happens every year, that disappeared over the winter. Now, that doesn't seem like that would be all that important, but here's what they write. During the summer, thousands of turquoise meltwater lakes adorn the bright white surface of Antarctica's ice shelves. But this abrupt event, the one they're referring to, the draining of this lake, billions of gallons of fresh water, occurred in the middle of winter when scientists expect water on the surface of the ice shelf to be completely frozen. Because ISAT-2, the satellite that observed this, orbits the Earth with exactly repeating ground tracks. Its laser beams can show the dramatic change in terrain before and after the lake drained, even during the darkness of polar winter. What did they just admit here? Scientists believed that these lakes froze over completely solid during the Antarctic winter. This imagery proves that they were absolutely wrong. That doesn't happen. By evidence of billions of gallons of fresh water surviving in a liquid state through the Antarctic winter. And I guess this would be the cherry on the top of this Sunday. New life discovered in Antarctica, 17 February 2021. This is from Dr. Hugh Griffiths, marine biologist at the British Antarctic Survey. Quote, "The total area that human beings have seen under the ice shelves adds up to about the size of a tennis court." Yep, that's right. The total area that human beings have visually observed under the ice shelves adds up to about the size of a tennis court. One tennis court on a continent larger than Europe. That's all that's been seen. And everything you've ever heard about Antarctica and climate change and how it's changing is based on those observations. This will be the Antarctica of the future. It will be a brand new world. If there were a way now to put someone into cryostasis and reawaken them, much like in the Buck Rogers thing, 2400, whatever year, this is what they would see. This is what they would know. Even if the ice was still there, it would no longer be an impediment. And if it's no longer an impediment to us now to see what we've seen, what could the future hold? They already know of caverns large enough to take off a plane inside of and fly around. Miles long, almost a mile high. This will be the world of the future. And everything everybody argues about now and is worried about now, whether it's some consternation over this political party or that political party, it's all going to fall apart. Because there's going to be a new reality. And it's not going to be space aliens. It's going to be right here on this planet. It's going to be right here on this planet. If you had told Europeans of the mid-1500s about North America, South America, the New World, they would have seen you as largely needing of mental health services. Some brand new world, especially based on the stories they had at the time. Oh, you mean that thing they were talking about with all the swamps and the thickets and the monsters? People are going to live there? Yeah, tell me another one. That's what they would have said in Europe. In France, in Portugal, in England, in Italy, in Spain. They would have said you're crazy. But what do we know to be the truth? This will be the future. This is going to be the greatest revelation of the 21st century. Mark my words. God bless. Like, share, subscribe. Happy Sunday, and we will see you tonight on Twitch.